Hello, everyone. I'll try to be fast. Okay, this is the topic which is most interesting, right? Yeah, measuring impact. Well, when I was told to talk about this topic, I was thinking about, should I tell the audience about regression analysis or cost-benefit analysis on volunteerism or social return on investment? Yeah, and then when I got this global standard, they're like, okay, I changed my mind. I now will give you something very practical. So if you have seen the global standard on volunteer for development, V4D, right? You will see that there will be key actions for all the topics we have talked about. And the one, my part is on measuring volunteer impact. So within this, there are 3 subsections. The first one talk about process, right? So here, the keyword is you have to talk to the community, identify the problems with the community, right? And then they said, the data that you will collect will have to impact the project for the community. Again, the word community. And use community input to measure impact. So we care so much about community. So when I see this, I think about VSO's MILE tool. Okay, this is a practical tool called Measuring Impact for Learning and Empowerment. And this is the step. So basically, before you start a project, the ideal period is to visit the community and do the focus group discussion with them, ask them what's their problems, what can we help you within this scope that we going to bid for the funding. And then they will identify the problems. And do you know what? They will start identifying who will collect the data for us. Usually you think, oh, we will have to hire an external evaluator to go collect the data, or you yourself, the organization, will have to hire so many officers to go collect the data. But actually, you can utilize the skill from the community because they will start assigning among themselves, oh, I want my kids to come to school every day. So let's see, there will be a mother from that house that will keep record of which houses do not send kids to school and why. And then they will keep all the track records for us. So when we visit them, they have all the data for us. So this is a very smart way to allow them to monitor the project for us. And so with MILE, you will go to the phase 1 by co-creation. You have to validate the project M&E, right? So with this, as I said, you will start asking them who will collect this kind of data. And phase 2, you start monitoring the data together. Okay, please take a photo because I have less time to explain. And then phase 3, we will come back and learn, what's the missing point, and can we find any accountability if something doesn't happen, such as we think this person should be the one responsible for kids going to school, and if kids don't go to school, can we hold them accountable? Okay, and then phase 4, co-creating in terms of knowledge for improvement in design and practice. So we come back to redesign again. So this could be one tool that you can use. And then the 4th point in the global standard set, ensure that the value added of volunteer is clear. So VSO has a volunteer reporting template, which you can use. So when you hire volunteer, you must give them a task, right? And the tasks come from usually the project's log frame. You have to have a log frame first. This is a simple log frame that say, okay, overall goal, we want to achieve what? To improve learning outcome through the provision of inclusive quality education for displacement affected children and youth, and enhance the self-reliance of youth. And then you have strategic outcomes, how many whatsoever. Yeah, there are more than 2 here, but we don't have enough room to present. And then intermediate outcome, and then output, and then you have to align all these things with the indicators, right? And this column is the most important, because then you will align that column with the volunteers' contribution. So before that, here's what we expect from volunteers. It's called it's called relational model, or 8 dimensions of relational volunteering model. So we expect volunteers to contribute in terms of quality and effectiveness. How can volunteer improve the quality of the project? Second, how can volunteer improve the inclusiveness or inclusion in the community? How can they go and make sure, the things about male and female inequality, or the caste, or the language barriers are addressed? How can volunteers there to create innovation? They might bring some new ideas to the community. How about collaboration? Can volunteers collaborate with other NGOs for the communities? If there are so many NGOs going into the communities, usually communities are very overwhelmed with all the help. Yeah, volunteers can be the one who organize all this. We have one volunteer in Kenya, in a refugee camp in Kenya, and believe it or not, the camp in Kakuma has been there since 1992, and still now it's open, and nothing is being better than 30 years ago. So our volunteer was sent recently just to coordinate among NGOs that give education intervention in the camp. First, the thing is the curriculum. There are so many curriculums inside the camp. So volunteer can be the one that asks all the NGOs, come sit down, let's align your curriculum, let's have just one, and one monitoring system, and one practice. So that could be good collaboration work. And then ownership and agency, volunteers there to encourage the ownership to the community. Community must feel that this project belongs to them. They have to make it sustainable, because if they don't feel it belongs to them, after we leave, they will forget it. They will not continue, and it will be a waste of money, right? They have to feel that the change comes from them, the community members. And volunteer can increase the participation with the project. Yeah, they can encourage. Everyone are represented in the community. And social action. More people see the work of other people contributing their work into the community will create even more social action. And the last one, inspiration. Volunteers can create inspiration very easily, because they are the outsider who come in, right? And people most of the time curious, why you sacrificing your precious time for us? Yeah, so that could be the role easily done by volunteer or expected from volunteers. And so with that in mind, the volunteer reporting template, you can map them up. So the date, the indicator, you can see this is a drop-down box, right? So use a magic of Excel file, how to do the drop-down box. And then you select the indicator, and then volunteer enter. Okay, this second quarter, I went to one afternoon multi-agency meeting collecting proposed training dates and developed teacher training pathway with 9 participants from 9 NGOs. Yeah, so she recorded down this volunteer and said, okay, number of meeting 1. Yeah, so you have a record, and then you just line up. Okay, there's a drop-down box here. So this contribution of mine Is it under which type of contribution under 8 dimensions? Yeah, so with this, you have evidence that volunteer have done something, then you collect the evidence, right? And by the end of the midterm analysis, the donor asks, what have your volunteer done? You said, here, see, we have recorded. So the second process is output and outcome. In the standard, it says, measure over time the capacity of both partners to contribute to community and development impact. So this one, they care about partners and also community. Yeah, so practical tool that I can think of is the VSO partner capacity and service quality assessment. This one, you have to visit your partner from time to time. You give them, a list of questions. So in VSO, we care about 3 areas. First one is inclusion. So you have this list of questions to ask the partners that you work with, such as, does the partner carry out social exclusion and gender analysis, or SEGA, to understand marginalization and exclusion in its context? Then there are 5 levels. So you sit together with them and then rate them. Level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next question. So there are lists of questions like this for inclusion, and then on social accountability, and on resilience. So these are the 3 areas that VSO care about. For your organization, it could be something else. And then with this, you put all the answer into the template, right? The template like this is for inclusion. Then you just say country, name a partner, new or ongoing partner, core program area. Is it education, health, or livelihood? Is it a global product or, signature program of your project? Then you just say, in terms of organizational strengthening and learning, what is the score for social inclusion and gender? What's the score for disability inclusion? How about services for marginalized and excluded group? Did they improve the score? Access to services by people with disability, have they improved the physical ramp, and infrastructure, all those things. So you must have all this in mind when you think about your project, right? And then now you kind of score it with your partner, whether your partners are ready or not. And the next one, disaggregate impact on vulnerable and marginalized members of the community groups. So the data should always be disaggregated. Don't give the donor, we have reached 5,000 people and we don't know they are male or female. We don't know how old they are. We don't know whether they have disabilities or not. So that's unacceptable, right? Yeah, so for VSO, we always have a reach template like this, You have to report your reach by age group and by male and female and by people with disability or not. It can go even further for your own purpose, such as the language they speak, the caste, the group in the community. And for the volunteers themselves, same template that I showed before, but the volunteers can also help counting how many people they have reached, because volunteer will have to enter, today I met these students, 0 to 5 years old, and then how many male, how many female, and all those things. They are having vision impaired, 1 female, and then the total. So ask your volunteer to collect the data for you when they go meet the community members. And third one, measure impact of the project on volunteers. So for VSO, we use volunteer surveys. We have pre-departure survey, end of placement survey, 12-month post-placement survey. And for VSO, the purpose is to measure their knowledge attitude and practices, or KAP. So we have several questions. I just give you 2 examples. So we have asked, during your placement, to what extent did your own knowledge, attitude, and practice improve in regards to identifying social exclusion and factors underlying it? So if the pre and post results turn out to be different, it means they improve their understanding. So that's good. Volunteer also learn something from the volunteering. And the 4th one, adapt impact measurement indicators and processes to reflect the community's perception of change. Yeah, so we have VSO management response template and MILD Pro. If you don't know what is MILD Pro, this is a very excellent monitoring and evaluation free tool that you can download. Just go to mildpro.org, and then there's a whole bunch of guidance for you to download. And you should read that. It's a very good manual. So for this management response template, so we have to respond back what to be improved next, right? So this is VSO 1. And then basically, MILD process. Well, when there's a problem, there's a channel for the community to get the feedback back to the project team, either hotlines, text messages, suggestion boxes, help desk, community meetings, all those things. And then we have a way to feedback to them. Next, this is the last slide on reporting. Yeah, so we have to be able to report what we have collected the data for, right? So report and give the feedback on a regular basis is a core. And then ensure that volunteer contributions are linked to sustainable development goals in our reporting, and collaborate with the sector sharing data and other evidence for impact for V4DE projects. Yeah, so you can use all these tools, and what I added more is you maybe need evidence summary for qualitative and narrative, what's happening. Not only quantitative data is necessary, but qualitative one. And also you should have annual learning report for the organization to understand and improve yearly. Yeah, so that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nalitra. I'm going to take a seat with you guys. Thank you for presenting. So what I'd like to do is actually, the most important thing is to have delegate interaction. So we really want you guys to engage with the panel. Now, I did have a few questions, but because of time, I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to ask any questions you want first. So does anyone have any questions for the panel? Okay, I can see a few hands up.
Hi, thank you for the speech. And I'm from Taiwan. I'm Angel, and I'm behalf of government of Ministry of Education. So I want to ask some questions because in Taiwan we have some competition for youth. Who they holding the volunteer team to oversee or in our country. And then after their trip, they come back and give the presentation, also have a competition to earn the prize. So we are hard to, how to design this kind of competition, the clarity and the quality, how can identify who is the best and who is the second one. So if you guys have any experiences or some information for us, maybe we can bring back and to improve this kind of competition. Thank you.
So maybe I'll give it a try. And this is something that I first encountered when I was with the board of VSO. At that time, there was a lot of discussion on national, then called the national and international volunteering. But in the Philippines, I think we're one of the few countries, maybe the only one in Southeast Asia. We have a national body. It's called the Philippine National Volunteer Service Coordinating Agency that coordinates the international volunteer organizations, and just very recently is looking into also coordinating the local volunteer organizations. So there are many volunteer organizations in the Philippines, so from our experience, and you were asking about young people, were you? Okay, so our young people have, I think, different avenues when they're in the university, because almost all student organizations in the university, for example, are encouraged to have their own volunteer programs, even if these are short-term volunteer programs. And outside the university, regardless of their educational affiliation or achievement, then there are also many volunteer organizations that offer volunteer opportunities, cutting across the many kinds of activities that are possible. Also, there is information that is shared with people on what is called the international volunteering organizations. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a competition, because people sign up for the volunteer program that they're ready for at a particular time in their lives. And they will also need to have the requirements. So like VSO requires that you have certain skills to volunteer. So some people will not have those skills necessary. They might opt to go to a volunteer placement where it is what they have that will match the requirements. So I think it's a healthy, people have a healthy choice, and what's important is people know what the volunteering opportunities are.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Rahim, just an idea, maybe
Yeah, of
collect up a
course.
whole lot of questions,
Yes.
just be conscious of time.
That's a really good idea, yeah. Okay, let's do that. So if you put your hands up if you have a question, we'll collect a few.
And so I really want to, so actually the reason behind it is basically because we often assume the community have this kind of need, and so that we do some service on the community, but actually they don't really need it. So may you guys give us some tips about how can we do a better need assessment before we start our project, so that we won't have surface pollution in the community? Thank you.
Should we collect another few questions? So do we have a mic for over here? Thank you.
I just want to thank you very much. I'm from Thailand. I would like to ask regarding the measuring impact. I think in the standards, it's also mentioned one of the indicator, which is about ensure that the value added of volunteer is clear. So I understand that Alitra has mentioned about the 8 dimensions of the way that volunteer can contributing through the programs. But also I'd like to hear more in terms of your experiences regarding research results in terms of the value added of the volunteers. What types of value added that you find from your research and also experiences working with volunteers. I understand that the impact regarding the making sure that the program or project that volunteer is contributing is supposed to be achievable or achieved, that is pretty much a basic requirement. But I just want to hear more in terms of the value added. If you could help, sharing more. Thank you.
Okay, and one last question.
I have, well, it's not question, I would like to add with some Wendy's thing that she said about expectation. And at the end, you said also the recognition. Expectation of the volunteer is also having recognition from the institute. So that's one I would like to add. Another thing is that Wendy said the volunteer's role ends. My question is, does it really end? Volunteer's role. And then the last one is to Nalitra. I know about VSO. They are doing across the world and wonderful work. But have you ever tried to really evaluate the volunteer satisfaction? Volunteer satisfaction.
Okay. Can you repeat your first question? Sorry, sir. Can you repeat your first question? The first one.
It's not, yeah, this is the question. And another thing is not the question really. There's this expectation, she said Wendy in her slide. So I say the expectation of a volunteer is to have recognition also.
Yeah.
She showed it in two different slides, but it goes across.
Thank you.
So that was it.
Thank you. So there's three questions here. So one is around the concept of service pollution. So how do we move away from assuming community needs, and how do we do a better needs assessment? So SOPHAT, would you like to respond to that?
Recently, we see a lot of like overseas projects being organized, and especially some of the volunteering go through the tourist agencies for the service, so that as you know, the tourist agencies mostly they are doing the tour, so they really don't have any idea about the projects that we are organizing. So when the request coming, it's okay to accept it and then place you with the local communities where they used to work with before, or they know some of the contacts person before. So this is some things that happens. I think the last several years already that happened. And I think this also lead to the service pollutions as well, that because of the, when you didn't have enough information about the project, how the project started, and then how it's having been going on inside the communities, what the impact's been through to these communities, that can cause the service pollutions as well. This is from what the experience I have been through.
Thank you, SOPHAT. One of the other questions was about the value of volunteering. So is there any research or is there anything that we can talk about to demonstrate what the value of volunteering actually is?
Yeah, so all those 8 dimensions are already value added of volunteers that could bring to the project, because the project usually have very concrete outcome and output, right? But volunteers can contribute much more in terms of the sustainability of the project. We have one project in the Rohingya camp where we have the mother and sister of the Rohingya children become our community volunteers. So they are trained to be like a teacher for kindergarten, and we strongly believe after we leave, these people will still continue teaching the kids in the communities, and the project will continue forever until the camp's not there. Yeah. And I have one more question on the satisfaction of volunteer. Of course, yes, we can capture that from the volunteer survey, you know, the 3 surveys. The last one, we asked them, and most of the time they said, yes, it have changed a lot for my life, you know, my life purpose and how I see the world now. Yeah, so I think satisfaction's there.
Thank you, Nalitra. So we are running out of time. What I would like to do actually is I wanted to have some final remarks. Actually, we all own these sort of final remarks because the question I really wanted to ask is, what does impactful and responsible volunteering mean to you? I'll get Wendy to answer that before we wrap up with the conclusions of this session.
Thank you, Rahim. No pressure then.
No pressure.
Okay, well, I'll go back to this question about, I mean, I think what everyone's looking for in relation to involving volunteers is a positive outcome. And sometimes that's as much about the process itself, which goes to the heart of good volunteer management. If the process is right, and you understand the expectations of your volunteers, and you can match their expectations and the expectations of the community, so I love this term, pollution, service pollution, and you can match the expectations of the community, or you can match the expectations of the individuals you're working with or trying to help, then that is key to a positive outcome. But also I think sometimes we're looking for quick wins, and in the volunteering world and volunteer involvement, sometimes quick wins are not what you get, because change can be a very gradual process. And I think we need to recognize this. So don't ask me next week, but ask me in 20 years, did the volunteers actually make a difference? So I think that's really important too. So I think understanding the dynamics of volunteer involving, which actually is a complex dynamic, understanding that and understanding how it works and understanding that it changes from generation to generation. I say to people, when you went into a shop 20 years ago, you didn't expect to see the things that you see now. And that's exactly the same with volunteering. And as we reach new generations of volunteers, they have different expectations. And therefore, we need to be alive to the fact that volunteering is what I call a social dynamic. So understanding all of that, I think, is the key to success. Not easy, it's a challenge. But there isn't a greater time for volunteering to be more effective than it is now, because the world needs people to stand up, be counted, and be active. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. So that concludes the panel. There is a call to action. Please feel free to download the standard. It's a tool for the sector for you to use, something for learning. It's one of many tools, and our presenters also gave us a range of other tools. The presentation will be available on the IAVE website, so you can actually have a look at what we presented, but also download some of the other tools that the presenters spoke about. The second thing is, tell us your experience of engaging with the standard. We realize that, you know, the standard will go through a process of learning and improvement itself. Over the next 2 years, we'll be piloting and validating to see whether does it work in practice. This is a team effort, you know. So, you know, people that want to engage with that and contribute towards the further development and improvement of the standard, so it can become more relevant. Can become more relevant to the sector, and we really appreciate your help on that as well. Lastly, you can sign the Kigali Declaration that will register your interest in supporting the further development of the global standard by testing it out in practice or joining one of the working groups that are sort of leading this area of work. So you get a chance to work with me and some of our colleagues, which would be lovely to have you within that group. So the last thing I'd like to wrap up with is, so I come from an East African family. And my grandma and granddad used to tell me all these African sayings. And one of the sayings that really stuck out to me is, if you want to go fast, you walk alone. But if you want to go far, you walk together. Thank you.
Hands together for a fantastic panel. Thank you so much, panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in luck because it's now morning tea time, so I won't stand between you and the food. Morning tea is out here, and afterwards it's straight into breakout sessions, and then lunch again is on the 4th floor, so plan the elevator trip. And then you're back to breakout sessions again, and at the end of the day we're back in here at 3:30. Enjoy.